Five Nights at Freddy's is one of the most popular game franchises of the past decade. Although it's a series generally known for its horror, the custom nights allowed for a more difficult experience, and this attracted a small portion of the community to dedicate themselves to pushing these games to their absolute limits. I've already made 2 videos on this topic, but now there's only one game left to talk about. It was harder than any Five Nights at Freddy's game that came before it. After the game came out, it wasn't long before everyone started asking the same question. Who was gonna beat the hardest challenge first? This is the quest to perfect Ultimate Custom Night. Our story begins in February 2018, a few months after the release of Pizzeria Simulator. In a Steam forum post, the game's developer, Scott Cawthon, stated that he was developing an Ultimate Custom Night add-on for Pizzeria Simulator, a game that had no custom night on its own. He used his website, scottgames.com, to tease many aspects of the game, which is where we found out the default roster would consist of 50 characters. He also used his website as a sort of progress meter to showcase how much of the development was completed. He quickly realized the scope of the project was far too large to relegate it to an add-on for an existing game, and thus, Ultimate Custom Night became a standalone title. After a few months, the game was ready to be released on June 22nd, but was delayed. This is because Scott had agreed to not release the game until a certain FNAF YouTuber got back home from his vacation. So, on the 27th, the game was finally released. As you might expect, the concept of dealing with 50 different characters at the same time is pretty mind-boggling. Unlike challenges from previous games, this one would be a lot more complicated and significantly more demanding. Five Nights at Freddy's, at its core, is a game series built on resource management, and Ultimate Custom Night is no different. To start, there's many things that need to be passively managed, like the power, the temperature in your office, your noise level, and the ventilation. There's also a menu on your monitor that allows you to supplement these resources with the power generator, the silent ventilation, the heater, the power AC, and the global music box, which can all be accessed through keybinds of the numbers 1 through 6. Only one of these systems can be active at a time, though, so it's important to choose which one is most appropriate to use at any given time. The monitor also has a reset ventilation button below the list of all these systems, which does exactly what it sounds like. Every so often, the room will start to fade to black, and if you don't want that to happen, you'll have to open the camera to reset your ventilation. On the topic of the monitor, there are 3 separate monitoring systems that need to be accounted for: the cameras, the vents, and the ducts. Each of these systems have their own animatronics and unique mechanics that must be dealt with. On top of all this, the office itself has quite a few things that need to be managed, such as the 4 doors and a plethora of animatronic-specific mechanics. There's also a currency system, Faz coins, which you receive every time an animatronic bangs on a door you've closed, and they can also be found on the cameras. Finally, the nights last exactly 4.5 minutes, and there are a few power-ups that you can get from playing the game to make your life a little bit easier. But a lot of the time, people would opt to not use them because you'd have to go back to the menu to turn them on, and ultimately they usually weren't that useful. For anyone who's unfamiliar with Five Nights at Freddy's in general, the AI level of any given animatronic, their difficulty, ranges from 0 through 20, with 0 marking a character's complete absence and 20 obviously being the hardest. The game also has a scoring system that assigns 10 points per one AI level added to the knight. So with 50 animatronics at a value of 20, this makes the maximum possible score 10,000. And that's essentially it for the basic mechanics of Ultimate Custom Night. Obviously, this challenge is so hard that brute forcing it would just not work at all. In order to ease into it, people opted to learn the game in parts, by learning animatronic mechanics in groups. From there, as people figured out the game, they would start to work their way up to 50/20 by adding more and more of them to the mix. But in order to understand the true difficulty behind this quest, it's inevitable that I'll have to at least give a basic explanation of how every character in this game works. That's right, all 50 of them. So buckle up. The character roster is arranged in release order of the games, so I'll go ahead and do it in that same order, starting with the FNAF 1 animatronics. Freddy advances in stages on the left hallway before getting to your door. If the door is closed, he resets and starts over. Bonnie and Foxy are intertwined, both showing up in Pirate's Cove. You can tell which one of them is there at any given time by looking at the animatronic figure on the left corner of your desk. If you view Pirate's Cove while Bonnie is active, he'll scream and turn off the cameras for a brief moment. For Foxy, he will attempt to slowly enter your office in separate parts, but checking on him in 14 or so second intervals will minimize the RNG that determines his progress, and it's also best to check the cameras when his figure isn't on the desk. Chica sits in the kitchen, and the game checks on every 15-second interval whether or not the global music box is on. If it's not on, she has a chance to get mad, and you'll know if she stops banging pots and pans together. To fix this, you have to go over to cam 4 and press the button to switch what music is playing manually. Moving on to the FNAF 2 animatronics, Toy Freddy is a bit of a funny case because he kinda just sits on cam 8 playing his own version of Five Nights at Freddy's on a computer. The enemy, Mr. Hugs, moves about every 15 seconds. If Toy Freddy loses the game he's playing, he'll blame you for his loss and has a certain chance to attack on every camera flip.
Mr. Hugs got me again.
Toy Bonnie and Toy Chica are pretty much the same, having a chance to enter the office every 15 seconds and simply needing the mask put on to get rid of them. Unlike in FNAF 2 though, the timing for putting on this mask is very lenient, and it just needs to be right before they stop moving. Mangle is a vent animatronic, and you just need to close the middle door in your office every time you flip your camera, and you'll be safe. This applies to literally every vent animatronic, which also includes Withered Chica, Springtrap, Ennard, and Molten Freddy. I'll explain in more detail why kind of trivializing all of them at the same time works. Balloon Boy and JJ are another case where they function nearly identically, both having a chance to show up in the bottom right door. Balloon Boy temporarily disables your flashlight, and JJ does the same with the doors. Every 13 seconds, Withered Bonnie has a chance to enter the office if the cameras are up. Putting the mask on will make him go away, but he takes a varied amount of time to actually leave even if everything is done right. The puppet just needs the music box to be wound, which can be done easiest using the global music box. It takes 17 seconds for the music box to fully unwind, so you basically just need to make sure that you use the global music box for around 15 seconds on every other 15-second interval. Otherwise, you should obviously be using something more important, like the power generator, which subtracts 1 bar of usage from your power meter when it's on. The final FNAF 2 animatronic is Golden Freddy, and he's super simple. When he shows up, you just gotta flip the camera or mask to make him go away. That's all. Now, you may have noticed that some of the animatronics from FNAF 2 kind of just aren't present on the roster, like Withered Freddy and Withered Foxy. Well, this isn't exclusive to that set of animatronics. A lot of the characters just didn't make the cut for the game. If I had to guess as to why this is, he definitely was experiencing issues trying to make a game this complicated in the ClickTeam engine. This is probably also why a lot of the jump scares were grossly oversimplified into shaking PNGs for optimization purposes. In terms of FNAF 3 animatronics, I mentioned Springtrap being a vent animatronic earlier, so that just leaves the 3 phantoms that made the cut. Phantom Balloon Boy and Phantom Mangle both appear on cameras and will become nuisances if you take too long to stop looking at them. Mangle will enter the room and make a ton of noise, and BB will jump scare you and force you out of the cameras. Both of these things are rather inconvenient and could sometimes mean trouble if combined with bad timing. All Phantom Freddy does is slowly fade into existence within your office, and all you have to do to get rid of him is flash a light at him. If he succeeds in fully manifesting though, he'll perform a similar jump scare to Balloon Boy and inconvenience you if the timing is bad. The FNAF 4 animatronics include both main game and DLC characters, starting with Nightmare Freddy. His mechanic is very similar to the one from his respective game, and you just have to flash the Freddles in the office to prevent him from showing up. Nightmare Bonnie is a plush animatronic, which also includes Nightmare Mangle and Circus Baby. They all function similarly, appearing on Cam 2 at 1, 3, or 5 AM. You need to visit the prize corner on Cam 7 and spend 20 Faz coins each in order to buy their plushie to avoid them jump scaring you. There's also another item in this shop, and it's one of the cornerstones of the 50-20 strategy, the Death Coin. Buying it gives you the ability to essentially delete an animatronic from the night entirely, but it doesn't work on everyone. Obviously, buying plushies along with the Death Coin would be pretty expensive, but there's an exploit that makes your life easier that I will describe later on. Nightmare Fredbear and Nightmare are essentially exactly the same. They just come from different sides. You'll hear a laugh from the direction that they're attacking, and then you'll be able to see their red eyes in the doorway. All you gotta do is close the door on them. Nightmare Chica doesn't make an appearance in this game, but Jacko Chica does. This is the first animatronic I've discussed so far that's directly related to the temperature mechanic. As the office heats up, she'll start to materialize in both halls simultaneously, which can be stopped if both doors are closed. However, if the temperature is above 100 degrees, this won't work, and if the office gets too hot, you'll just lose. Generally, it's a good idea to just keep the office cool to avoid any of this. Nightmarion is one of the simplest, but also one of the most annoying characters. He'll appear on your screen when he's in the office and slowly fade into existence if your mouse cursor is on top of him. If he fully manifests, you get jump scared instantly. It's rather unforgiving, but thankfully there are only certain places where he can show up, so later down the line people learned to keep their mouse on only certain parts of the screen to avoid it being a huge issue. Finally, we have Nightmare Balloon Boy, who sits slouched over on the right side of the office. Upon every camera flip, there's a chance for him to stand up. When he does this, you have to flash your light at him to get him to sit back down, otherwise he'll jump scare you. If you flash your light while he isn't standing up, however, he'll also jump scare you. The only FNAF World character on the roster is Old Man Consequences, and he's really easy. Every 5 seconds you're not in the cameras, there will be a chance for him to appear. If he does, he'll display a little fishing minigame, and all you have to do is press C when the timing is correct, and he'll go away. If not, he temporarily disables camera access. Of the 4 sister location animatronics, 2 of them, Circus Baby and Ennard, have already been covered, so that just leaves Ballora and Funtime Foxy. Ballora functions the same as her sister location Custom Night counterpart, just listen to directional audio and shut the doors at the right time. Funtime Foxy is a bit of a doozy. He sits in Cam 6 and he has a sign outside his curtain that displays his showtime. You must show up to Cam 6 exactly on time, or you'll get jump scared because he'll be sad that you didn't show up to his show.
It seems you couldn't make it to my show, so I brought the show to you.
The first showtime will be anywhere from 1 to 3 AM, and after every successful showtime, a new one 1 to 3 hours later will be chosen. It's possible for a showtime to even be at 6 AM, and even though the night would technically be over, you must attend 6 AM shows as well, except for very specific circumstances which I'll talk about later. Now we're at the final game in the roster, Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. For some reason, Scott decided that 18 of the 50 animatronics in the roster should be from one game. So this one's gonna have a lot. First of all, Scott grouped the trash characters into Trash and the Gang, even though Mr. Hugs is playing FNAF with Toy Freddy and Pan Stan is just completely absent from the game. They're essentially just distractions, with the balloon having a random chance to take up space on a camera, and number 1 crate having a chance to whisper, and then bass boost jump scare you upon every camera flip. Helpy will have a chance to appear in your office upon every camera flip, and if you fail to click on him in time, he'll pull down the cameras and blast you with an air horn, making a lot of noise in the process. Everyone in the mediocre melodies is a duct animatronic. The ducts have 2 exits and only one can be closed at any given time. People realized that placing an audio lure on the left side here with that side open is generally the best procedure, but each of them have slightly different behaviors, with Happy Frog and Orville being the main outliers. Generally, you want to use the heater to keep them all away from the exit, but this doesn't work on Happy Frog. Similarly, Orville is usually unaffected by the audio lure, so both of them basically need to be managed in slightly different ways. Rockstar Freddy stands idle on the right side of your office for the whole night, and upon every camera flip he has a chance of starting to ask for 5 Faz coins. If you take too long, he will jump scare you. There is thankfully an alternative way to deal with him though. Using the heater will cause him to glitch out and you won't have to pay. However, this has the consequence of wasting power, both during the use of the heater and when you need to cool the room back down afterwards. Rockstar Bonnie will appear in your room kind of randomly, and you'll need to search through cams 1, 2, 6, and 8 for his guitar, which will be sitting on the left side of the screen. If you fail to find it fast enough, you'll get jump scared. Every 10 seconds, the game will roll a number to determine if Rockstar Chica appears, with it then being a 50-50 on whether she shows up on the left or right hall. She won't enter the side of the office that has the wet floor sign placed. Rockstar Foxy is a bit of a strange case, because he actually shows up even if you don't have him activated in the roster menu. Every minute, there's a chance for his bird to appear on the left side of the office. If you click on the bird, Rockstar Foxy shows up and offers several outcomes depending on RNG. In the worst case scenario, he jump scares you, but most of the time he'll offer 4 buffs from which you can choose 1. Next we have Music Man, who's sensitive to the noise level in your office. If there's too much noise happening for too long, he'll start playing cymbals, which progressively get faster until eventually he gets fed up and he jump scares you. El Chip isn't actually present as an animatronic, but instead has a chance to play an ad that covers your screen every 10 seconds. All you have to do to get rid of it is press enter or click the prompt. Funtime Chica has a chance to appear every 35 seconds with a flash and some dialogue. Like El Chip, she's kind of just a surface level distraction. I talked about Molten Freddy being a vent animatronic a while ago, so I'll move on to Scrap Baby. She doesn't initially start in the office, but she has a chance to show up every 5 seconds the monitor is up. She acts the same as she does in the scrap sections of Pizzeria Simulator, and every 5 seconds she has a chance to progress. All you have to do is shock her to prevent this, in which case she will disappear on the next camera flip and never show up for the rest of the night. Scrap Trap, or Afton, has a chance to appear every 29 seconds. Marked by a loud sound, plus the office lights flickering. As long as you react quickly enough by closing the side vent, you'll be safe, and he only shows up once a night. Lefty sits in cam 3 and becomes agitated by both noise and heat. He has a stat that determines his level of irritation, and he'll progress through multiple stages until eventually jump scaring you if you don't manage these resources. He can be calmed down with the global music box though, which decreases his irritation by 1 every frame it's active. Finally, last but certainly not least, we have Phone Guy, who literally just has a chance to call you every 20 seconds and you have to press a mute button, and if you don't, one of his phone calls will play and it elevates the noise level for like a minute, so kinda just don't let him do that. And that, my friends, is a brief explanation of all 50 characters in Ultimate Custom Night. Is what I would say if I weren't lying, because there's actually more.
You need to leave!
So the obvious one is Dee Dee. She's a character from FNAF World that has a 10% chance to appear every hour, singing a tune and then proceeding to add one of 22 animatronics from the main roster arbitrarily picked on a list. There's also 6 more secret animatronics that I've yet to mention. When playing 50/20 mode, Dee Dee is replaced by Zor, or Shadow Dee Dee, or whatever you want to call her. As opposed to having a 10% chance every hour, she has a 33% chance to appear every 10 seconds. Once she does appear, she will add 6 more secret animatronics at an AI level of 10. So in actuality, the true maximum score of Ultimate Custom Night is not 10,000, it's 10,600. Now that we've got all that out of the way, we can finish this section off with me describing all of the secret animatronics. First off, we have RWQ-FASF-XC, or Shadow Bonnie, everyone just says Shadow Bonnie, who appears randomly during the night and causes your office to turn pitch black for 10 seconds. There's no way to avoid him, but thankfully he'll only appear once a night. After that, we've got Plush Trap, who sits at Funtime Foxy's stage. If he's sitting on the chair, you have to watch him until he goes away, otherwise he'll jump scare you. Nightmare Chica will also be added, and her jaws will slowly encroach on the player from the top and bottom of the screen unless the power AC is turned on. The final 3 are all from sister location, that being Bonnet, the Minarinas, and Lolbit. They act almost identically to their sister location Custom Night counterparts, with Lolbit specifically adding to the noise level for as long as he's on screen until LOL is typed on the keyboard. With that, I've completed my brief description of technically all 58 separate characters in Ultimate Custom Night. And now we can talk about the fun part, actually beating 50/20. Now, as I said at the beginning of the video, Five Nights at Freddy's is a very popular game, and that being said, there are countless people who were gunning to be the first victor of 50/20 mode after the game came out. However, for the purpose of this video, I'm going to be focusing on the first 3 people who managed to beat the challenge: DJ Sturf, Dako, and Rhemery.
Alright, I'm not gonna leave until you put that seatbelt on. Yes! Oh my goodness.
If you're maintaining your temperature, you don't have to worry so much about Freddy.
Go, that's it. Yes!
If you've seen my previous 2 videos on custom nights, DJ Sturf should be a very familiar name to you, but I feel like I never really introduced him properly. His YouTube channel actually goes back to the very beginning of YouTube, with dozens of DDR videos from years ago. He started his FNAF career with a pretty impressive for the time 0 deaths run of the entire first FNAF game, including 420 mode. He even did one of the first green runs, completing 420 mode with 13% power remaining, which was the record from 2015 all the way up to 2019. He continued to be on top of FNAF challenges all the way up to the release of Ultimate Custom Night, and just like Dako, he started his journey on launch day. DJ Sturf was a prime candidate for the victory. Would he be up to the task?
Oh! The paper plate! What is going on, guys? Doerksen back again, and finally Scott has posted a new teaser on his website, and it says guess who? Jesus Christ, another teaser! Look at it! It's freaking Chica, guys.
Dako started his journey through Five Nights at Freddy's as one of the pillars of early FNAF theory crafting, with videos dating all the way back to January 2015. Fast forward to 3 years later, the entire game's release was delayed just for him. Yeah, that's right, the certain FNAF YouTuber I mentioned at the beginning was this guy. And on the day of the game's release, he was live on YouTube and locked in for the grind of his life. Finally, we've got Rhemery, who's sort of a wild card in this whole discussion. She isn't a famous FNAF YouTuber or someone who is already well known for being skilled in FNAF challenges. Her online presence before playing Ultimate Custom Night, as far as I can find, was just making music. Looking at just the uploads, you wouldn't be able to tell this channel had anything to do with Five Nights at Freddy's at any point in time. If we take a look at the live tab though, damn, okay. With the introductions out of the way, let's go back and start from the beginning. On day 1, people were mainly interested in using the easiest animatronics to achieve high scores. This was pretty easy to do since some of the characters are just way more obnoxious than others. After just a few hours into his first UCN stream, Doerksen was already aiming for a 6,000 point run utilizing this setup. This is a pretty good starting point to pave a path to 50/20, as many of these animatronics just kinda do the same thing, or are just generally very easy. On the other hand, most of the animatronics that are absent are some of the most difficult to deal with. And as you'll come to find out in this video, the difficulty curve as you add more characters doesn't really look like this, it's more like this. Nevertheless, he did manage to pull through in the end and ended his stream with a 6,000 point high score. He spent the end of the stream trying his hand at 50/20 mode, and what did he have to show for it by the end?
Hey!
29 seconds. Yeah, this is gonna take a while. DJ Surf was also able to get 6,000 points on his first day. Unfortunately, his 50/20 mode attempts went a little worse than Doerksen's, with him getting 28 seconds and not 29.
Oh, I hit it!
I recognize you, but I'm not afraid.
A few days would go by, and by June 30th, Doerksen and DJ Surf successfully cleared 40/20 and 41/20 mode respectively.
Yes!
You may have noticed that I've yet to mention Rhemery, and that's because her first stream wasn't until 2 days after the game's release on the 29th. But just because she wasn't streaming doesn't mean she wasn't playing.
Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Please. Yes! Yes! Oh shit! Oh, Doerksen, I'm going for your high score. I'm going to beat you. Maybe.
By the time the 30th rolled around, she was sitting at a score of 7,400, with more than 10 hours of playtime on stream alone.
Holy moly.
Although she was lagging behind the other contenders in terms of score, she was still definitely putting in the work. If we take a closer look at DJ Surf's completion, thanks to a screw-up with his Blue Yeti, we actually get to see some text that goes in depth into the strategy that he was using at the time, since he didn't get to talk out loud. Once you get into the really hard stuff of UCN, you start to realize that the beginning of the night is kind of the hardest part. You have to set up a bunch of stuff right away, like the audio lures, and the ducks, the snare, and the vents, the wet floor sign, and more intricate stuff involving systems like the power generator and cycles that you have to keep track of in your head. It's ridiculous. He also cites a strategy from a user named SonicYay2 that involves the door and vent animatronics, which I partially described earlier. Office stalling. Basically, most characters can't actually attack you while you're in the office until some kind of disturbance is made, be it the ventilation making your vision go dark or the camera being flipped. So time spent in the office is generally much safer. And cam stalling happens when you're watching certain animatronics on the cameras, but they can't actually move because you're actively looking at them. Let's use Rockstar Chica as an example. She doesn't enter on whatever side the wet floor sign is on, right? So if you were to select the camera watching the opposite hall, it would literally be impossible for her to get in because you're either actively watching her, cam stalling, or in the office so she can't attack, office stalling. These two strategies would be integral in developing a working method for beating 50-20 mode, and they'd basically be the basis of every route going forward. 50-20 mode was finally seeming a little more doable. Going into the next month, July 2nd marked an important day for the quest to beat 50-20 mode. Dawko and DJ Surf both broke the 9,000 score barrier, beating 46 and 47-20 mode respectively.
Alright. Yay! 9,400, 47-20. Yay! Yay, I can go eat dinner now.
A key strategy in allowing this completion to happen came the day before from a YouTuber by the name of Fastdasher. He posted a video showcasing a way to avoid paying 20 fast coins for each of the prize corner plush animatronics. If you put your camera onto cam 2 within a 20-second time frame after their arrival and keep it there until the next plush animatronic spawns, the game will delete the previous plush animatronic since its time is done and replace it entirely, therefore rendering the problem void. This worked wonders for DJ Sturf's 47-20 completion, and by this point everyone was starting to get a hang of the cycles and patterns you needed to use to manage characters and resources like the power and temperature. Surely the completion of 50-20 mode was just around the corner, but that couldn't be further from the truth. There's a problem with the strategy that Fastdasher came up with, and it's that having other characters that require attention on the cameras would make this exceedingly difficult to pull off. As soon as you leave cam 2 while doing this cam stalling strategy, the plushies would just kill you because you'd no longer be stalling. And thus, we arrive at the big roadblock that needs to be passed in order for a completion of 50-20 mode to even happen. These three motherfuckers. These last three animatronics exponentially increase the difficulty of the game if added, as it forces you to check the cameras at random intervals and a lot more often than would be ideal. They don't just ruin the plushy cam stall strat, they make everything harder.
I don't know. Those last three... I don't know. Anyway...
The next day, DJ Surf concluded that Foxy would be the best one to add to the mix, as it would allow him to continue using the cam stalling strat for the plush animatronics. Unfortunately, Foxy adds a massive RNG aspect to the run, since he basically has a random chance to progress further every time you flip the camera. This means that adding the other two animatronics, which both involve even more usage of the cameras, would just further exacerbate the problem Foxy causes.
It really seems ultra random with Foxy whether Foxy will actually jump you or not. The obvious elephant in the room. The last two. You gotta pull away from cam 2 to go to Funtime Foxy. You gotta play that game with Toy Freddy.
In the description, DJ Sturf describes how he's played for over 22 hours since the game has released, and that it's been a very stressful 22 hours. As July 4th rolled around, Dawko was also putting in a lot of hours trying to beat 48-20 mode, with his streams already adding up to over 30 hours of playtime. Instead of going for Foxy, he decided to add Toy Freddy instead. People pretty quickly realized that it was more viable for Toy Freddy to leave your fate up to chance than to check his camera all the time, but this obviously introduced another major aspect of RNG, because how quickly Toy Freddy lost was RNG, and how quickly he would try to kill you was also RNG. You could office stall him, but every time you flipped the camera up to reset the ventilation or do anything else, you'd basically just risk a chance of dying to either Foxy or Toy Freddy. It was really annoying.
I didn't put Foxy on because he was being a meanie tonight. I do feel like it's possible though.
Well, looks like Dawko beat 48-20 mode. He was only an hour and a half into his stream, so he decided that logically the next step was for him to go straight to 49-20 mode, leaving out Funtime Foxy and finally getting to the penultimate step of this massive journey. And how did that turn out for him? Now, in the meantime, you might have noticed that Rhemery kinda hasn't been present for a while. What was going on with her during all this? Well, she was struggling a little bit. A few days earlier, on July 2nd, she was still stuck under 8,000 points whilst everyone else was aiming for 9,000. She was desperately trying to beat her high score of 7,800 with no luck. I'm not sure how much she was paying attention to the other competition during this grind, but either way, I imagine that this would have been a pretty discouraging rut to get in. But did she let it stop her though? Absolutely not.
Come on. Yes. Yes. Woo! Yes. Yes! 9,000 bitches! Oh. Oh! Oh boy! Yes! It's over 9,000! Yes.
In just a few hours of playtime, Rhemery had managed to boost her score to 9,400. Closing the gap between the competition. The next day, July 5th, Doerksen and DJ Sturf would both complete 49-20 mode, with Rhemery actively attempting to skip from 9,400 to 9,800 points to match her competitors.
I've done it, boys. I've done it. I've freaking done it. I freaking did it! I freaking did it!
Let's see. First, there's an introductory greeting from the company that I'm supposed to read.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Final cutscene coming up, guys. Thank you so much for watching the stream. Wow, just thank you, Lord.
Everyone was having a really hard time dealing with the added RNG that came from Foxy, but everyone universally agreed that Funtime Foxy was the most annoying final animatronic to add, so they just had to suck it up. Except, they didn't. Earlier, I brought up the really interesting thing that you can buy from the prize corner, the Death Coin. The Death Coin can only be used on certain characters, but thankfully it works on Funtime Foxy. By doing this, you can continue to keep camera usage to a minimum and still use the plush animatronic cam stalling strat. Obviously, the elephant in the room is still Toy Freddy and Foxy. Toy Freddy can basically be ignored. Once Toy Freddy actually loses, he gets angered and has a 10% chance on every 0.5 second interval to attack once the monitor is flipped. This, combined with a number of other factors such as Foxy's progression, is the reason why the cameras are used so sparingly in higher difficulty challenges within UCN. This strategy is what allowed a 50-20 mode completion to go from a pipe dream to an actual, tangible possibility. Keeping all of this in mind, I want to show you all something interesting that happened to Doerksen that day. About an hour after he completed 49-20 mode, he was already going all in on 50-20 mode attempts. It was the beginning of the end. Nearly 4 hours into his stream, he got on this run.
Four AM. Good job. 4 AM, boys. 2 more hours, and we've done it. I never thought I'd get that far, I'll be honest.
On July 6th, Rhemery played on stream for over 11 hours, beating 49-20 mode and finally joining everyone else in the grind for 50-20. Doerksen was having a bit of a hard time, and I honestly don't blame him. At this point, Rhemery and Doerksen had both put over 40 hours into streaming the game, with DJ Sturf putting in almost 30.
Four seconds off 5 AM.
DJ Sturf really couldn't afford to be putting so much time into this stressful endeavor, which is why, on July 7th, he decided to take a break for his health, and thank God that he did.
Ultimate Custom Night, I'm planning to go back and beat 50-20 mode. I think it's doable. I think I can do it. I'm very confident that I could do it. However, I need to be at or near 100% health to be able to do that. You know, prioritize your health over a video game that can be completed later. And that's much more important. Take care of yourself. And again, it's been 26 to 27 hours of just nonstop stress in the game, and then strategizing, thinking, what can I sub out, everything. It's been crazy. But it's been fun. I'm going to look back on this and look back and be like, it was pretty fun. So, all right. I'll check you next time. The end.
In other news, Rhemery had managed to get to 5 AM on 50/20 mode, 2 hours and 39 minutes into their stream.
Wait. I beat Doerksen. Oh my god. I have high score than Doerksen. Oh.
Doerksen was able to beat her right back though, getting further into 5 AM with a 409.3.
I'll take that. 20 seconds away from beating it.
I'm not sure if these streams were happening simultaneously, but this back and forth was definitely still crazy, and it marked the final steps towards the goal of defeating 50/20 mode. Doerksen was definitely nearing his wit's end though, as after 4 hours straight of playing this agonizingly difficult challenge, he just couldn't continue.
I'm done, boys. Sorry. I can't do it. We'll try again tomorrow. If I wake up and somebody random beats it, congratulations. Take care, guys. Lots of love. Thanks for watching. I'm gonna go die now. Bye.
And with that, Doerksen's stream ended. But Rhemery's did not. Her stream went for nearly 12 hours. Although she was only able to get to 5 AM a handful of times, she didn't let that stop her. For some reason, the VOD on YouTube gets cut off at the end, so the stream was probably actually longer than 12 hours and the VOD just cuts off at that point for some reason. And her next stream starts with her having a higher personal best of 416.3, less than 15 seconds away from beating 50/20 mode. Nevertheless, eventually, this stream did end, and thus July 8th rolled around. Doerksen was nowhere to be seen, and neither was DJ Sturf. Rhemery was a mere 13.7 seconds away from glory, and now nobody was there to stop her. Once more, she went live. Was this it? Was this the end?
Why the music was? No! What? Why? Oh my god! God damn it. Why? Holy shit! Oh my god! No! Oh my god! No! Oh my god!
After 63 hours, 46 minutes, and 12 seconds of streaming, 50/20 mode in Five Nights at Freddy's Ultimate Custom Night was finally conquered by Rhemery. And of course, let's not forget about our runner-ups who also put in a tremendous amount of work to realize their goal. On July 12th, both DJ Sturf and Dako, having taken small breaks away from the stress, also successfully completed 50/20 mode.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Lord. Okay, so that's... And that's not even gonna give me the music. It's not even gonna give me the music. Wow. A nightmare is over. Oh man. Prayers from me through this time have been appreciated as well, and also for Dako. I mean, he's been going through such stress. I'm hoping that he's taking a break now and taking the rest that I took, but, you know, after the fact. I don't think I could have pushed in all wisdom to get this first. I would have sent myself to the hospital, so again, I think I made the right decision. So anyway, that's it. Check it next time. Peace, God bless you, stay tuned, and thank you so much for staying tuned. It means a lot. You're valuable as a person. God bless you. Check it next
Oh my god! Am I kidding me? Well, this is a weird situation we're in right now, guys, because I didn't even think I was ever going to be able to beat 50/20 mode, ever. And you can see my reaction to beating it. That's the first time ever I have been that emotional to beating a challenge or anything, ever. I love you all to pieces, and take care of yourselves. Thank you for experiencing this with me. It's been a hell of a ride, and it's been worth it. Take care, everybody. Lots of love, and I'll see you all next time.
Following the 3 original victors, countless more would beat 50/20 in their wake, with Scott personally compiling a list of the first 20 victors on a Steam forum. Wait a second. What? Even though the original journey to beat 50/20 mode was over, you couldn't really describe it as being perfected, right? After all, no matter how hard it was still easy enough that people could add arbitrary rules to make it even harder. And for the rest of the video, I'm gonna talk about the ways that people did just that. While Rhemery and the others were busy relishing in the glory of having beaten 50/20 mode, Argon Matrix was going for an even harder challenge, 50/20 with no death coin. A very particular strategy was required in order to solve the obvious issues Funtime Foxy being present would present. First of all, you needed to make sure your ventilation resets were lined with every in-game hour so that you could check cameras during showtimes. Then you'd need to hope that you get a 1 AM first showtime so you can cam-stall the first plushie, and you'd have to grind for fast coins to purchase the 3 AM plushie. Then you'd have to pray that you get a 4 AM second showtime so that you don't have to use the cameras at all past 5 to actually win. This strategy also relies on the admittedly possible chance that Zor doesn't spawn to summon the other 6 animatronics before 41 seconds, because if she doesn't, then Plushtrap will kill you before you even have time to do the route. All of this, of course, is on top of everything else that has to be dealt with in 50/20 mode. Needless to say, this is much harder than 50/20 with a death coin, and adds even more RNG. To put into perspective just how much more ridiculous it was, it took Argon 97 hours of playtime to achieve the feat, and he had died at 422 before beating it. Years later, True Player would invent an alternative strategy for no death coin that lessened the RNG factor, and to this day, it's the more widely used method. If you were to instead farm for fast coins starting from the very beginning, you could purchase both of the plushies you needed instead of just one. This would allow you to stay on Funtime Foxy's camera reliably throughout the first half of the night, and it honestly isn't that hard to do because there's a lot of interactions in the game that give you fast coins. The most important detail in letting this work is to never pay Rockstar Freddy fast coins and to always use the heater for him. That way you won't have to waste any of the coins you were collecting. Another player named Gumball, or Gumball V, I'm not sure, was the first person to beat No Death Coin while buying all 3 plushies, 2.5 years after the game's release. Funnily enough, the strategy isn't actually too different from what I previously described. The only difference is that you farm for more fast coins and buy all 3 plushies instead of just 2. The next thing that I briefly want to mention is sort of a last-minute addition that I found while editing, but I thought it was really interesting. Basically, a player named Braden was able to beat 50/20 mode with no death coin and no plushies. It involves some strategies that I haven't quite talked about yet, but will elaborate on in the near future. Beating the game in this way was assumed to be impossible for a pretty long time, but it's thanks to a player named Cam UCN, who I'm gonna mention a few times, they're actually quite important, that sentiment was proven incorrect. It involves getting a 3 AM and 6 AM showtime for Funtime Foxy, and at 2:15 you need to switch off of Cam 2 for exactly 1 frame as 3 AM rolls around to check Funtime Foxy, and for some reason the game just doesn't end up killing you to the plushie if it's done on the exact frame. For the rest of it, you're going to be office stalling or Cam stalling both of them, the plushies and Funtime Foxy, so it ends up working out even without a death coin. There's one more challenge that I want to talk about in this general category that I think really pushes the limits of the game. It was arguably one of the most difficult possible things to do in Ultimate Custom Night. 50/20 mode, no death coin, no exploits, done by none other than True Player. So, what do we define as an exploit? Well, you remember at the beginning of the video when I described office stalling and cam stalling as being the backbone of 50/20 strategies? Well, throw them both out the fucking window because they're not allowed anymore. This basically means that everyone is attacking all the time. This challenge is so hard that in the description, he describes it as easily the hardest official FNAF Max mode known to man, and is by far the hardest video game challenge I have ever completed in my entire life. And that's coming from someone who has beaten 50/20 mode using various different methods and restrictions probably well over 100 times, if I had to guess. There is no way for me to describe how insanely difficult this feat is. True Player is no doubt one of the best FNAF players of all time. There's a lot of other miscellaneous 50/20 mode runs that exist, like beating it 9 times in a row, beating it with no sound, beating it at 175% speed, beating it with all plushies, no death coin, and no power generator? Jesus. Okay, but the list goes on. There's a whole other category of challenge that people love to do in basically every Five Nights at Freddy's game, though. Green runs. I briefly mentioned it earlier, but a green run is essentially just trying to beat a certain night or challenge with as much power left as possible. You have to further optimize your gameplay for what already needed to be pretty optimized because it's 50/20 mode. I talked about all manner of green runs in my previous Custom Night videos, but none of these green runs were nearly as insane as the ones in Ultimate Custom Night. I mean, how much power could you possibly beat 50/20 mode with? Well, let's find out. The first known Ultimate Custom Night green run for 50/20 mode is Gunball's 26% run from October 17th, 2020.
26%. It's such a what number? 26%.
About half a week after this run, the familiar DJ Sturf accomplished a 30% green run on the 22nd. A lot of the power in 50/20 mode was wasted shining the flashlight at Phantom Freddy, who you obviously wouldn't want jump scaring you since doing that would force an animatronic that was being office stalled into the room. At least, that's what people thought. It turns out, when Phantom Freddy jump scares you, he won't show up again for a pretty long time. So naturally, if you were to just close the necessary doors the instant before he briefly incapacitates you, you'd save a lot of power you'd otherwise burn beaming him with your flashlight.
And I got 30! Yes! Yes, yeah, ha 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 ha! 30%! No power-ups, 30%. That is so nuts. Oh man.
With some minor optimizations, such as not fumbling with Toy Freddy at the beginning, he was able to further improve his own record up to 32%.
32! Okay! Alright. Oh man, okay, that's nice. 32, that was a pretty good run.
Well, that run was pretty solid. I bet nobody's beating it by much anytime soon. Alright, it's finally time for the part of the video where I talk about Shooter25, one of the best FNAF players of all time. The day after DJ Sturf's solid 32% run, he improved the record by a whole 6%. How was such a massive improvement made so quickly? Well, DJ Sturf spent a really long time in the cameras, whereas Shooter went through them pretty quickly, especially at the beginning. This resulted in him getting the necessary fast coins for the death coin through forced door interactions and not as much through finding them in the cameras like Sturf did. These tiny optimizations are the key thing that separated Shooter25 and DJ Sturf. And you know the funniest part? Shooter beat himself by 2% the next day. What a fucking maniac. Next you're gonna tell me he used a completely different route to save 20% more power. Yeah, so in reply to one of the comments under his 40% run, Shooter was like, oh yeah, death coining the puppet would probably work pretty well. Oh, well, I don't really know how to deal with Funtime Foxy without death coining him. Well, he didn't say all that exactly, but he did get to thinking, what would happen if he used the death coin on the puppet instead? Well, the global music box, the main source of power drainage in 5020, now only needed to be used for Chica. This means that you could not only avoid actively draining power, but you could actively prevent power from going down by using the power generator more. If you use the same strategy from the no death coin route that involves timing your ventilation resets with Funtime Foxy, then you can successfully pull off this route. It's honestly no wonder he was able to save 20% from the previous run alone with this crazy new route change. However, the challenge wasn't to be underestimated. In the description, he talks about how getting a run this good took him over 60 hours, which is basically how long it took Rhemery to beat 5020 mode at all. Around this time, another new strategy called the zero frame camera flip was also introduced. For some reason, if you open the camera on the same frame that you close it, every action in the game that would happen had you opened the camera as intended would happen, except for Foxy and Bonnie figures switching on the desk. So you can use this trick to change which one is on the desk, which can slow Foxy's progress dramatically and reduce overall RNG, whilst also saving a bit of power. In order to improve this even further, it would take Shooter another 67 hours of playtime to achieve another massive jump to 71%. The reason for this was thanks to a lot of new minor optimizations coming together. For example, a new strategy involving Lefty was discovered by a player named Nephrite. I wouldn't blame you for forgetting what Lefty does by this point in the video since we haven't really seen him doing much, so he has that irritation stat that goes up progressively the more noise and heat is bothering him, and you can probably tell why this would be an issue, since managing those two resources takes power. What Nephrite discovered, though, was that Lefty could only kill you on every 1 second interval. So instead of using one long camera flip to buy a plushie, multiple short flips could be used instead to minimize RNG deaths by avoiding the lethal intervals, and thankfully this also helps in saving a bit of power. The record was taken by Spondos a month later, raising it by 1% to a new record of 72. It seemed like Shooter was disinterested in taking it back because he waited 5 months to do attempts again, and it only took him 3 days for him to improve it up to 74% once he actually started trying. Between his 71 and 74% runs, a new strategy for the beginning of all 50/20 runs called Segmented Night Setup was introduced. If you compare these two runs, you can see that it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. The setup at the beginning is segmented between shorter camera flips that save power, as opposed to spending more time on the cameras. In the description, he said that he definitely could have gotten 75%, but getting 80% would require a perfect run and perfect RNG, and is pretty much a completely unrealistic thing to hope for. At this point, everything was so optimized that in order to take it any further, you'd need to really think outside the box and come up with new ways to do things that have been established for a long time. I thought this was the part where it cuts away to a new strategy. Why hasn't it happened yet? On May 9th, 2022, two players known as Cam UCN and Ruby discovered a downright ridiculous new strategy. The entire time, we were still using cam stalling for the plushies on Cam 2 and having to click off of that camera during showtimes for Funtime Foxy, which was complicated, and for a long time this seemed like the only possible way of doing things if you weren't deathcoining Funtime Foxy. But in reality, there was a secret third option, the FPI or Frame Perfect Input strat. Using this strategy, you have to rely on specifically getting a 3 AM first showtime. None of the other ones work. Once 3 AM rolls around, you have to open the cameras and click on Cam 6 on the exact frame that it turns 3 AM, and then press S to close the camera on that same frame. During that time, the first plush animatronic will disappear and the second one will take its place at 3 AM, and simultaneously, you will have fulfilled the showtime requirement by showing up for exactly one frame. Afterwards, you then have to switch back to Cam 2 to continue cam stalling the future plush animatronics. If you've done it correctly, then congratulations! You've just made it past the part where over 90% of your runs will die due to the sheer mechanical difficulty of the trick. Even if you do all of that correctly, there's only a 1 in 3 chance of getting a 6 AM showtime, which you need. If that doesn't happen, it's rendered meaningless, and you have to start all over again. Then, even after all of that, you have to switch your camera back to 6 just after 5 AM so that you can office stall Funtime Foxy without having to show up to his showtime at 6 AM. This is the absurd difficulty that Ultimate Custom Night has come to. And using this strategy, Shooter was able to break the final 20% barrier and beat 50/20 mode with 80% power remaining. A truly amazing feat that even he compared to playing like a TAS.
Phantom Freddy, okay. I know.
Yes! I did it! Let's go! I did it! You did it! I got everyone! Oh my god, I did it! Oh my god! Oh my god, tell everyone! Tell everyone! Tell everyone! Oh my god! Oh my god! 80.28!
There was another good player who was up to the task, despite how ridiculously difficult it had become. The YouTuber named Spondos that I mentioned a little earlier, by just being a little bit better all around, was able to push it up by 1% on June 26, 2022. In July, Spondos theorized that a different route might be better than using FPI at 3 AM, but for a reason he doesn't even know himself, he waited over a year to actually try executing it. During this period, UCN pros got their hands on the source code of the game, which allowed them to understand it even more than they already did. Fast forwarding to October 2023, Spondos would start attempting his new route and strategy. It's similar to FPI, but utilizes 2 and 5 AM showtimes rather than 3 and 6. The reason why this is better is because 3 and 6 AM showtimes involve keeping Lefty satiated for an extra hour, and Spondos realized that this really wasn't necessary. It utilizes a different type of frame perfect input, where rather than clicking off of Cam 2 to Cam 6 on the exact frame of the showtime, you instead click on Cam 6 on the exact frame you close the camera at around 3 minutes and 44 seconds. Normally clicking off of Cam 2 at this interval would kill you because you're no longer cam stalling, but because you exit the camera on the same frame you leave Cam 2, the game just doesn't punish you. Since the ventilation reset happens slightly before the trick is performed, you can close the camera while on cam 6, which allows you to office stall both the plush animatronic and Funtime Foxy for the remainder of the night. Now, I know a few of you started thinking earlier after I mentioned Shooter's task comment. What would a task green run look like? Well, guess what? Shooter went ahead and made one, and it is insane. For the uninitiated, task stands for tool-assisted speedrun. In this instance, it's not really a speedrun, so maybe tag is more appropriate. Basically, it allows for the manipulation of RNG and the ability to place inputs with frame-precise accuracy or just slow down your own gameplay tremendously to painstakingly create a theoretically perfect version of gameplay. You want to know a fun fact? There are a lot of characters in this game that just don't do anything to you given you have perfect RNG. Some characters don't spawn at all. Do you remember Rockstar Foxy and his bird? Yeah, with perfect RNG, you can just get mini buffs throughout the night that save you even more power. Soundproof is the one that's chosen specifically so you can make as much noise with the power generator without making Music Man upset as you want. Oh, what about Lefty, you might be wondering. Guess what? With perfect RNG, he doesn't care what you do. You could throw him into a blast furnace and play an air horn into his ear and nothing would happen as long as you were having an exceptionally lucky day. You want to know what else happens in this task? Zor doesn't spawn at all. Which means in turn, the other 6 bonus animatronics don't spawn either. The chances of this happening are 1 in 131,072! Bro, what? The final power value is 98.04%, which means only 1.96% power was lost for the entire night. And that, my friends, is perfection. But it isn't human perfection. It's just a task. All this time we've been talking about Ultimate Custom Night, but in reality, this game is not nearly as hard as it could be. I feel like I've made that pretty clear with how many of these ridiculous challenges people have managed to do. There is a website though, a compiled list of the hardest challenges that the FNAF community has to offer, known as the Max Mode List. On this Max Mode list, the original base 50/20 mode is placed as the 73rd hardest challenge. 73rd! What lies at the pinnacle of this list? What is so much harder than 50/20 mode that it's 73 places above it? What is perfection? Allow me to introduce to you Ultimate Custom Night Deluxe. Ultimate Custom Night Deluxe is a fan mod of Ultimate Custom Night created by Nephrite, who I mentioned earlier, and it's not the only mod that exists for high-level UCN players, but it's the one that I want to give the special focus to here. The goal of the mod is to rework the game into a form that takes relative difficulty and community input into account, as well as removing all exploits that weren't intended by Scott Cawthon, like stalling. The puppet needs to be manually wound, every plushie needs to be bought, the night length was increased to 6 minutes, and, in general, many characters that were previously pushovers or easily cheesed have been corrected, and overall, the game has been made so difficult that even beating the normal 50/20 on this is significantly harder than no death coin, no exploits in the original. Of course, that didn't stop people from beating it anyways. People did green runs, and people even beat that with no death coin, which is currently the 4th hardest challenge on the max mode list. But if UCN Deluxe no death coin sits at number 4, then that begs the question, what's number 1? Well, to answer that question, you need to understand that no matter how hard something is, it's usually not hard enough for at least one person. So an entirely new challenge was created. Harder than 50/20, harder than no death coin, harder than no exploits, harder than anything the Five Nights at Freddy's community had ever seen before. Hopeless Pursuit. a super buffed version of Deluxe's 50/20 no death coin. You might remember me mentioning the player Cam UCN a few times in the video who helped to discover the FPI strat along with Ruby. She was going to try and beat Hopeless Pursuit. She was going to try to beat the hardest challenge in FNAF history.
I fucking.
Oh my god,
shit.
Fuck him. Fuck him.
Oh my fucking god.
Guys, what's your predictions for how long it's gonna take?
All of the hours put in by countless people over 5 years led to this one victorious moment. All of the innovations, the different strategies, and tiny, seemingly insignificant optimizations stacked for years from countless people, all with the same goal to master one game, have finally been realized. I think this is as close to perfect as we're gonna get for a long while. This has been the quest to perfect Ultimate Custom Night. I hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time.